with the Mike Cybers show with my guest Jane Flanagan. And on the last show we talked about growing up versus maturity. Well, this is a continuation. This is part 2 of that show. And we've been talking about how to address the issue and have some examples. And some of the examples we talked about on the first show have to do with young people growing up not having the maturity level they need to exist in society, or the life skills, as we talked about. The life skills to maintain a job, to maintain a relationship, to maintain their status, whatever it might be in society that they're in right now, to live in a community that is maybe has some more mature people in it. How does a 20-year-old or 30-year-old live next to an apartment or a house of a 50-year-old or a 60-year-old? The different life skills that they've achieved over the years, there's a difference there. But the maturity should still be there from a 20-year-old to a 50-year-old. You think about the decision that you're making. You think about how it's going to impact you or other people. You know you can't have your way just because you want your way. You know you can't throw a tantrum anymore and get what you want. But adults, like we talked in the last show about road rage,
Right.
that's a tantrum.
Yes, it is.
And you've experienced other things like that with people, with neighbors, boundaries on properties, mowing, wind blowing something from one house to another house.
Leaves.
Leaves. You know, how do you, as a neighbor, blame the other neighbor for the leaves falling off the tree, and before they hit the ground, their wind is carrying them into your yard? And I've seen some hellacious fights between neighbors. And it's not like the neighbor raked them all up and put them in a pile and the wind blew the pile over. But then there could be some responsibility there. I mean, we used to, when we were kids, our mom made us rake up the leaves in the yard and throw a blanket over them so that they wouldn't blow away.
Right.
Which is fine. But if they fall to the ground and before they hit the ground, they're in the neighbor's yard, I have seen some serious issues from neighbors. Your leaves are falling in my yard, and and next thing you know, sometimes even the police are called. How immature can you get?
Yep.
So we talked about that life skills, and that starts really, really young. And you were talking about your grandchildren, or
My great niece.
your great niece, and her teacher in her classroom. Can you explain that, what you were talking to me earlier about?
Well, she asked me to go to school for Grandparents' Day because my mom had passed away, and she always took my mom. And we had a little show and everything, and we all went back to the classroom. And the teacher was showing the kids responsibility. You know, that's your desk, you know. And this one little kid was sitting there, and she's going, the blackboard's not cleaned off. Whose job was that? And the little kid raises his hand, and he automatically got up, cleaned the blackboard off, sit back down. But everything was, are your pencils put away? And she didn't do it for him. And they all knew their desk for the grandparents had to be cleaned off and ready for the projects that we were going to do. And they had them do everything for the grandparents. And for the kids that didn't have grandparents, we got to adopt one of them. So I ended up with one of M's friends with me. And they all, she says, you get your chair. So she goes to her desk, gets her, and they And when they got done, okay, we're done now, what are you gonna do? They all got up, picked up their stuff, handed the stuff to us that we were supposed to have, cleaned up our stuff, put it away, and then they told the kids, well, if anybody that wanted to go out for lunch with the grandparents, you know what you gotta do. They had to go over and sign their names, start signing out, and then I had to go over and sign right next to them, and the time that we left. But they knew before they left that classroom that their stuff had to be picked up and everything had to be in spot. And I was impressed with her. A young teacher, she was pregnant for the first time, and she just had those kids knowing exactly what to do. We're done with this project, and they picked up and they cleaned up. That's where a lot of it should start. Now, I don't know if all the teachers do that. They did when we were in school.
Mm-hmm.
But I was really impressed with the way that she had the kids. They all had their responsibilities to do. What the consequences was, because I never seen none of them screw up. So.
Well, I think a lot, and I was taught that when I was in the grade school too. I remember everybody had their desk and had their certain things they had to do every time. And I think pretty much a lot of teachers do that even to this day, in the young children. Where I see or I feel it changes is as they get through end of middle school, the 8th grade, into the high school, is the focus goes off life skills, appropriate behavior, unless it's extreme.
Right.
Unless the behavior is extreme, it goes off that onto academics, which is also important, and never dismiss that. But there's a long period of time from, I'm going to say probably 5th or 6th grade, where the life skills taught by the young teachers and the young students is not happening anymore.
Right.
So you have from 5th or 6th grade, we'll say 6th grade, give them the benefit of the doubt, all the way through to high school, to 12th grade. You're talking 6 years of virtually little or no life skill, basic life skills, except for extreme behaviors, taught in school. Now, also I know the school is not the substitute for the parent. And I understand that, and there's a big controversy, always has been a discussion about what the parents teach and what the schools teach. Well, I think that as you went to the school and saw how the kids were trained, or taught this and that, and take your turn and clean up your mess and put away your stuff, maybe that is where parents need to be involved in that process with their children.
Right.
And I would venture to say most parents, if they remember back, would remember being taught that.
Yeah.
While they were in school.
Right.
It's just that they've stopped that with their children. And the school teaches it, but I wonder how many children carry that behavior on when they get home. Now, I imagine they do in the first year because it's something they're proud of. They get good compliments and thank yous from the teachers when they put away their toys or their pencils or their paper and clean their desk off and make it look nice. Put their chair back under their desk and all this kind of stuff. And kids like to be praised. And we all like to be praised. I mean, I do too. I need to do more to get more praises, but that's beside the point. When that slows down or stops being taught in the school, it's not carried on at home.
No.
That's where I think part of our breakdown is if the parents went to the school, and I'm sure some do, but I'm sure a lot don't because they work. So it's not easy. You know, we're asking the heart of working parents again, take time off from school, from work, to go to school to see how their kids are taught. Usually doesn't happen very often.
Right.
So how do we correct this or fill this gap? And that's the part that we always need to talk about, and we talked about that in the last show, was we're going to find a location somewhere in Kalamazoo area that will allow us to come in and offer basic life skills to people who feel they need them, because it's not like it's a legal requirement. It's not.
Right. And we ran into that too, you know, when we were asked about life skills.
Right.
At Blue Seahorse, we were, you know, there is no life skills classes out there.
Well, we were right at Blue Seahorse. We are writing some.
Yeah.
We are putting some into the curriculums that we have for anger management. You know, you ask a lot of people why they get angry, and we talk about that as anger as a result of expectations not being met. Expectations may be unreasonable, which again, you get back to maturity level. I expect this person to do this, or I expect that person to do that. And when they're not being met, then we go from expectations to frustration. I'm frustrated because my expectations are not being met. And if those frustrations aren't addressed at that level, then they can grow to become anger. And how many times, and you and I talked about this before, do people stuff their feelings? And if you don't have an outlet to talk about your frustrations, people blow up.
Right. And I believe that we all have done it.
Oh.
I've done it.
Yep.
I mean, I used to be a very quiet person, believe it or not, and I wouldn't speak up to defend myself or even get into a confrontation about anything. So there's probably a lot of stuffing, you know, back then. And once I realized that I needed to speak up, I felt a lot better because I
Right.
wasn't stuffing anymore. Now I'm probably too mouthy. I blow up too much, but.
Well, you know, it gets to a point if you haven't got, again, the life skills and the maturity to say, okay, I need to get rid of this stuff. I need to talk to somebody. Because keeping it bottled up just creates anger and frustration, and things can happen. You become less patient, less tolerant of other people. And a lot of people don't know where you're at. So they get confused on your behavior and your action. But if you haven't got a guide or a goal for your allowing your frustrations to come out, then you can go over the top, as you said. Sometimes you go over the top, and I'm not going to let this happen to me again. So I'm going to now be not a nice person. I'm not going to let anybody walk on me. I'm not going to let anybody.
And be aggressive.
And now you become aggressive. And now you become the person who is causing the problem, rather than the person trying to just get through the day. So there's a lot in that, and there's a lot to that about dealing with maturity, making mature decisions, taking time to take a step back sometimes, instead of having a knee-jerk reaction.
But I think you need some kind of coping in there too. Some kind of coping skills.
Right.
Because if you're not used to doing that and you don't get the right reaction, the coping with somebody that's not listening to you or whatever, then you're not going to cope with the situation very good. And I ended up, earlier in my years, I ended up with coping skills. It took me a long time to learn them on my own, you know.
Right.
And that's about what you end up doing. You have to learn them on your own.
Well, a lot of it is picking your battles, letting go of things that aren't valuable to you. And we ask our clients a lot of times to weigh up what's valuable to you right now in your life, being right or not going to jail, or whatever the value system is. And a lot of them, you know, we talk about marijuana as a big thing. A lot of them know nothing wrong with marijuana. It's an organic plant. You know, you hear all these stories all the time. It's not until you show them the actual research and documentation of how detrimental it is to your brain and to the other parts of your body that it has a very serious negative effect on you health-wise, worse than cigarettes, that people start to actually think about it. What's the value of my having my joint today versus my long-term future and health? So if you're going to be a responsible, mature adult and start to raise a family, what is your value system at the time?
Yeah, we've done a lot of talking about that lately, about the children that are involved.
Right.
You know, I mean, because with the families, you know, they could lose their families, you know, in a lot of different ways.
Right.
Legally, you know, the wife pulling out or whatever, you know, do you put value on your children enough to want to change your life?
Right. And that only comes from maturity.
Maturity, yes.
What is my value system? And we talked about this on a show several shows ago about if DHS becomes involved with your family. Once you're on their list, for whatever reason they're called, it's very hard to get off that list to start with. And with all due respect to a lot of parents out there and children out there, the DHS for children services is in the benefit of the child, because so many children were left in the home when they shouldn't have been,
Right.
and were either killed or maimed or hurt dramatically. And every child and every family from that point on is subject to that overall big umbrella. And I support that. And sometimes it goes too far. I don't know. That's a whole different.
I was gonna say, it's hard to weigh what's too far when it comes
Yeah.
to kids.
It is.
And their safety, you know.
And because they're a lot of times they're not there because they want to be. They're there because they have to be.
Yeah.
So that's a whole different show, and we can do another show on that if we have to later on. But right now we're talking about the maturity of adults in the world today, especially in the United States, and we'll bring it back down to Michigan, bring it back down to Van Buren County and Kalamazoo County, and the people that we can actually get in touch with. How do we educate adults who feel enabled, who feel that they're entitled to things when they're not, when they want to have everything and no money to pay for it, they're in debt over their heads, they're upside down in most mortgages and loans they have? How do we get them to back up and take a step back? And again, I'm talking with Bill here, the producer here, about trying to write a program and start a community, or get the community talking about starting a community, or bringing this into an existing community that's willing to and wanting to change, to have everybody support everybody look after everybody. And there's nothing wrong with a neighbor looking after a neighbor and not seeing an elderly lady come out for 2 days in a row to go and knock on the door.
Yeah. Just
Are
check.
you okay? Today, people are afraid to do that. Well, we want to create an environment where people are not afraid to do that. And we've got some really great ideas, and we're just waiting for the right time to bring this out and talk to people and get some more members of our team together to write a proper proposal and see if we can actually make something happen and then have it grow nationwide. That's a big, big plan.
Yeah.
But,
We're not gonna live long enough for that.
well, we might. You never know. But you also have to have people mature enough to look at that picture and see the sense in that picture.
Right.
Because you get so many people, well, nobody's going to tell me what to do. Nobody's going to tell me what to wear. And I don't have to pull my pants up. They can hang down around my crotch. I don't care. Well, what does that tell me about you as a person? And from our counseling perspective and things that we've learned, that most kids at some point step out of the routine of their life to create their own identity. Because until that time, they're the son or daughter of Mr. and Mrs.
Right.
Oh, you're so-and-so's son, you're so-and-so's daughter, you're so-and-so's son, you're so-and-so's daughter. They have no identity of their own. And we as parents need to help them create their own identity. And if we don't do that, they'll find one of their own. Hence all the blue hairs, the tattoos, the colored rinses in people.
That's right.
The piercings all over the body. They're trying to be themselves.
Yep,
or
trying to find themselves.
Trying to find themselves. And you know, there's nothing wrong with that, except some people don't know when to stop. Which is sad, because I do my counseling in the jails, and we have a lot of inmates and a lot of clients that come to us too with tattoos all the way up their necks, all the way up. And every time I suggest, well, let me find out if I can find somebody to come in and help you remove some of your tattoos. I've never had one say, I'd like to keep most of my tattoos, but if you can get the ones off my neck where they're not so visible, and off my hands. A lot of them are quite happy to have them taken off their hands and off, because that was done in a period of time on trying to become independent, trying to get some recognition, trying to fit in, without the maturity of knowing how long it's going to affect their lives, because consequences down the road. If I do something today, how is it going to affect me tomorrow? And the next day, and the next day, and the next day. It's so important that we somehow come up with a system. And you know, Blue Seahorse is gonna focus on trying to find a venue here in Kalamazoo area to offer some life skills.
When you've got, like they always say, babies having babies,
Yeah,
and we've ran into that a lot at the
Right.
community center.
right.
We used to have people come from the shelter that had to leave during the day. They didn't know how to pay their rent, they didn't know how to maintain their bills, they didn't know how to cook. They were just young girls that had no life skills, has never been taught how to have responsibility. And I don't know how you can have children and not know responsibility, but it's happening,
Well, that's a little personal issue on all this stuff. It's the one thing they can do without education is have babies. And it makes them feel good for a few minutes. But I agree with you, and I've talked to some of these girls too, and some of the fathers. And they're not dumb people. They just were never taught. And you sit down with them for a while and you get them to start talking about what they want to do with their life and how they feel about life and the responsibility they have now. And most of the men I've talked to are young boys that have children, is they don't see any future. I'm already 17 years old. I have a child. I have a woman. We're not married. And we can't get married because she's still only 16 or 15. What is in store for me in the future? Well, they never thought about that. I mean, we're getting into safe sex and all this other kind of stuff
Yeah.
now. We don't need to go there, but
Still responsibility, though.
it's still responsibility. And it has to come back to where were the parents? And that's the touchy part. Because as a parent, I would get very sensitive if people started to imply that I wasn't a good parent.
Right.
But you're only a good parent to what you know, what you knew and what you were taught growing up. And that old saying about you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Where do these kids learn more than what their family's teaching them? Because their home is their castle, their home is where they live. Everything they know, unless they belong to a good community center that offers education and
Or
discussions.
church.
And then, if you're going to offer discussions about stuff, you've got to get parents' permission to talk to them.
Right.
So it's like we're fighting ourselves. How do we open this up to everybody to get this stuff? Well, we find a venue, which we're talking about, that we can start these discussions. um, in the local area, the local communities. And have people aware of each other. Have people aware that growing up doesn't mean you're mature. Just because you're 17, 18, you're 21 now, you can buy alcohol, you can buy this, you can buy that, doesn't mean you're mature. It means you're legal,
Right.
and you're going to be definitely held accountable for your actions if you do something silly. But you're not mature. It doesn't mean you're mature. There's a whole lot of ways to do it. If we could get the churches to open up and have a life skills class. Basic life skills too, not that I'm not going to say it, because I'm a very committed Christian disciple. I'm a disciple, I think, of the Word of God. But how do you offer stuff to people who are not Christian? You've got to bring them in. You got to get them together.
Right.
You got to.
And a lot of the people won't come into the church.
Yeah. It's silly that we're that divided.
Yeah.
And we've had that issue. We've had that conversation already before. So we need to find a neutral place where everybody's welcome, where there's no judgmental going on because you come in, and offer these classes to people, offer these conversations, and maybe it just means sitting around a table and having a discussion. What's mature and what's not mature? Where do we do, what can we help you with? What can you help others with? Because there are people out there who have an opportunity to help other people but don't know how to do that. Don't know how to find
a way.
Don't know how to find a way to help other people.
Yeah.
There are some very responsible parents out there, some very responsible people, young adults with serious maturity on their heads, and don't know how to help other people and don't know where to go to do that. Well, we want to offer that opportunity if we can find it and make that work. And our first goal, I guess now, after talking the way we're talking, is to find a venue, which we've got a couple in mind.
Right.
And then we can put those out, market those, get some support, and make that happen. I'm a firm believer that we are a product of our environment. Sometimes it can change. Sometimes we grow out of our environment if it's inappropriate, and we learn to forget or change some of the things we were taught that weren't right. I'm a firm believer that can happen.
That can happen, yes it can.
It can definitely happen. And I want to now stop talking about it and start doing something about it. So anybody that's got any ideas on how to help us get this going, please give me a call. As I say before, if I don't answer the phone, please leave a message. I will call you back. And we can start this going. If you're looking for someone to help you get something going, give us a call. Either Mike Siver at the Mike Siver Show or Blue Seahorse, which is in Paw Paw. Their office is there. We can maybe help you get something going that you've been dreaming about for a while.
Everybody working together.
Everybody working together makes things happen.
Yeah.
So on that note, and with that, we've run out of time again.
Wow.
This is going by very fast. Please stay tuned for the next show. And Jane, thank you very much for coming on the show.
You're welcome.